So, hi, Bruno.
Hey Adam, how are you, man? Good to see you here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, perfect. So, question to you: how you started programming? So, what was your first Hello World?
Oh man, that was a long time ago. I first started programming BASIC on a CPM machine,
Okay.
and it was there was this little game that I wanted to play, and that I was playing with my friends, and I found out that there's the source code for the game, so I could actually um, put my name in certain places, and then the game would know that was me and would give me advantages. That's how it started.
Hey, cool. Where you found the source code on GitHub?
Oh no, that was 2 years ago, right? Yes, it was not on GitHub at all. By that time, we were actually loading the programs from a tape cassette.
Yeah, exactly. So I also started with Basic, but it was Sinclair. So it was ZX Spectrum.
Yeah, mine was a
CPM.
TRS 80
Mm-hmm.
machine.
When was it? You remember that?
Well, it's somewhere in the 80s.
Yeah.
I was about 8 years old, and my dad was, let's kind of talk briefly about my dad here. My dad was aficionado by technology, and he wanted to buy technology for me, right? It's like, and so in Brazil by that time we had we're forbidden to import equipment, so everything had to be built in Brazil. We had this crazy law that prevented importing of computers. So we had a friend of my dad. He was a diplomat, so he traveled to the U.S. and brought in a Commodore machine. So he hired this professor to teach us BASIC, and then but my father got so excited about the idea that he bought a computer for me, right? And so for it was very fun.
Yeah, this is actually cool. Too, about the law, it seems like the old Brazilian law swapped over to USA right now, right?
Well, I don't know.
Like
The
with
US.
the tariffs, the tariffs and Mr. Trump.
Yeah, but it's a very different thing, right?
This was just fun, just fun.
Yeah, no, but it's one thing. It's one thing when you pay taxes, and right now in Brazil, taxes are very high for important things. For example, right? So you buy a computer in Brazil, so it's like 3-4 times more expensive than if you buy here in the U.S.
Oh, really?
But it's one thing about tariffs. The other thing is the forbidden, right? Because then there's nothing that you can do, and you have to go illegal if you want to do anything, right? So that's kind of, I think, the big
Yeah,
difference.
yeah, of course. What was your next language? So you started with Basic. What was the next language? You.
Oh, I work with lots of things. I work with Clipper, and actually represented a Clipper library in Brazil. I work with I did a scientific work with Prolog, and I work a lot of C. I was doing before I learned Java, I was doing C development for TCP/IP. So I went through lots of different languages. I'm not sure exactly what one was the very next one,
Mhm.
but at that time we experimented with whatever was able to put your hands on, right?
But why you did it? It was like at school, or was it your a job, or what you built actually?
A lot of it when I first started, a lot of it had to do with I think that my dad kind of helping me out and incentivate me to go and experiment with things. And but then very soon I start. I wrote a couple of softwares for to print business cards and like glue labels. And so I was selling those things. So actually I was making a little bit of money, and so there's all kinds of things. I think there's a lot for experimentation. So I did play along with games. There's one time that I remember doing. At that time you would copy from printed magazines. You'd copy the source code in assembler, so you'd type all the assembler code by hand, so you could actually have a game, right? So a lot of it was just kind of, we had that computer, and so we had to make it work for something, I guess.
Okay, this I think a great way to learn programming, right? So bottom up.
It is. Yeah, experiment. I think the only way for learning programming is experimenting, right? I think this is, trying out and experimenting with things and see what you can do. And so that was for me when I first when I was hired by Sun. I was very, very lucky. I was hired by Sun a week before.
Wait a second. Before we go to the Sun, what interests me?
Cool.
What interests me is, were you the lonely hacker, or you had a group of peers where you all together started hacking with your computer?
So it was mostly a lone thing, but I live in Brasilia, and that time Brasilia was the capital of Brazil, and Brasilia was we had like a BBS, like a national BBS system that was free to use. So that was like way before the internet or anything like this. So I both had my own like BBS in my computer, but I just had online, so people just kind of call once. And then we had this it's called Cirandão. It was like a national BBS system run by the Brazilian telco company, and so there's lots of people that could join in there. So there was a little bit of relationship with other people, and most people that I was dealing with at that time were a lot older than I was. But so most of the things that I was doing was mostly myself, but we had this community of people online, kind of online, I guess, that were exchanging ideas and exchanging. I remember going out and getting my bike and going to the other side of the city to get a tape from a guy that I bought online. So he had a new software that he was writing. So we had a little bit of relationship with other people too.
Cool. So you worked mostly alone. So what was your drive? What motivated you, to implement all this stuff? So this is amazing. So you were still only hacker. So why you are so inspired by programming?
For me, it was programming. For me, has always been the ability of creating things, right? The ability of just you and the computer, and you were able to do something with it, right? I was never a sports guy. I was never, I never had. I think my main thing was computers, right? So it was actually a way for me to do things, right? I didn't need to go out and do push-ups and things like this and become strong, right? And so I could create my own stuff, just me and the computer. I think that was more what I was looking for.
And were you motivated by a movie, or just it was like your own motivation?
No, it was not a movie. It was. I think that my main motivator was my dad, right? He would just go out and buy stuff and just kind of drop things in my table to see what I would play with, right? Well, yeah. I remember my dad once, he called me many years later, and he called me. I was at university already, and he said, "Bruno, what's a scanner for?" I'm like, "Well, a scanner, you scan photos and put in the computer." And he said, "What else?" "Well, we can scan text, right? So you don't have to type, and you can bring to the computer." And what else? "Well, I think that's it, Dad. That's, you scan things, you put things into the computer. Why? Do you want to buy a scanner? Do you have a reason for a scanner?" He's like, No, I saw one. It was cheap, and I bought it. I don't think I need it. You can have it." So that was my dad, right? So I think a lot of it was he, he incentivized me, and he would buy this stuff. So I remember having this TRS. Went to a computer fair in Brasilia, and there was a similar computer that we had, like the one we had, and he had floppy disk drivers, right? And he's like, oh, this is cool. So you don't need the cassettes anymore, right? So he made a deal with the guy, and he bought like the discs that were like the two discs. He bought two disc drivers right there at the show, right? It's like the presentation model or something like this, and it was like way overkill, right? Because by that time there's no use for second disk drive, right?
Yeah.
So only would use the second disk drive to copy from one disk to the other. So I think that a lot of it was his motivations.
Yeah, cool.
I'm very.
So now you are the JavaMan, right? So, but before JavaMan, what was the biggest thing before Java, or the coolest thing before Java you built? You remember that? What was the most fun or the coolest?
Yeah, I think that the coolest thing that we're doing right before Java was so I was at university when Java came out, right? So I think that the coolest thing that I was doing at that time, there's two things. One, I was doing like more for work, that I was writing TCP/IP applications, and me that was like totally amazing that we could kind of connect to the network and things like that. And the second thing is that I was doing a Prolog application to that was my my scientific project with a university teacher. That was doing a Prolog application to recognize cloud patterns, right? So you could get a satellite picture, and you would recognize the clouds on it. So you could remove the clouds to make a clear sky picture. So so that was a crazy Prolog application that we were doing.
I think Prolog was the beginning of AI, right?
Yes, Prolog was. Actually, that started with a university professor that was doing. He was teaching AI at university, and so I was taking that course. And then a friend of mine told me, I wanted to work. On the second floor of the university. They had this special room with air conditioning, and they had this very cool sun machines, right? The workstations, and we're like, how do I get in this room, right? Because we only had access to the Windows machines in this hot room with lots of people. And I'm like, how do I get access to this room? And so, you can't, because this is just for third years, right? And you're still in the first year or second, and I'm like, man, but I want to get access to this. That guy over there, he's not in the third year yet. And they said, well, he's doing, a scientific initiation. I'm like, cool. How I do this? So there's this professor teaching artificial intelligence, and I asked him, how do I do scientific initiation? And he's like, oh, I have this project we can submit to get budget for it. And I said, why do you need budget for? Well, so we can get you, actually, so I can pay you. I said, oh, I don't want to be paid. I want the access to the workstation, right? I don't want to be paid. Said, oh, you don't want to be paid, so you can start working right now. So that's how I got involved in this Prolog, project, and I got access to this cool Sun workstations.
You remember what was it? Was the Ultra workstation, or what's called the which workstation they were?
No, it's not. Ultra came way before. I was already working at Sun at that time. It was. I think that when I start working for Sun, that's when the Spark Station 10 came out.
Okay.
Right. So probably the one that we had at university was like some previous version of that. I don't even remember their names.
Okay.
Like
so how you came to Java then?
So I was working at TCP/IP, and I started working for this company that's installing TCP/IP and creating TCP/IP applications, and the servers that we had at that time, right? Because by that time you're creating these TCP/IP networks, but they're all totally internal networks, right? You put a server there, connect all the computers to the server. There's no internet at all, and so the computers that we put on those networks, like the main server, the file server, right, was a Sun machine. And so this company had this relationship, was a value-added reseller for Sun, and so I was working with them, and then one day Actually, this interesting story because I had stopped working for this particular company because my dad did not want me to work anymore. He was like, Bruno, you have to study, finish your university, finish school first, then you can start working. And so he pressured me to not stop working, so I stopped working. And then I was visiting him, like I said, and we are at the beach, and I said, Dad, this whole thing about not working is not working for me. I'm gonna go back to work. And he's like, no, you shouldn't go back to work. He has his own issues, and you don't need it. And I'm like, no, but I do need, right. That's the cool thing that I like and everything. So you know how things are. I was like a teenager. We start fighting at the beach, and I yell at him. I kicked sand on him, and I got mad. And I got back home, and I kind of slammed the door in his face. From like I was pissed off. And then at that, right in the middle of this, right, we were both discussing this whole thing. The phone rang, and so the guy on the other side said, it was a friend of mine. He said, Bruno, Newton Gadgets from Sun Microsystems is looking for a trainee. And he said that if you want the job is yours. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, right in the middle of the fight, my dad sat down with me on his computer to write my first resume. Mm-hmm. And then, so I mean, he put aside all the things that he wanted to do to help me do what the things that I wanted to do. So that kind of stuck with me very strongly. And so I went on, I joined Sun. And
when was it? Sorry, when was it?
That was 1995, right? So actually a week later, John Gage made the first demonstration of Java to the world, right? And not only that, I was very, very, very lucky because there's on the very first day I joined Sun, there was this. I didn't know what to do. Right, Sun was a hardware's advanced sales post, right? Sun in Brazil, and I didn't really know exactly what I was going to do in terms of software development. But when I joined the very first day, I didn't know what to do, and my boss told me, well, there's this guy from the U.S. here that's going to do a Solaris training, right? So just go and watch that. And so, it was come lunchtime, everyone leaves the room, and there's just this guy sitting right there. He didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to do because it was my first day, right? So I had no idea where there was any restaurants for it to go, anything like this. So I said, well, let's go together. And so this guy, I have to track down his name because I don't remember his name, but this guy told me, said, oh, you want a software development? There's this cool thing that Sun is doing. They should take a look at, and it's called AUK, right? Mm-hmm. And he showed me the website. It's all Java already, right? So the whole website was Java, hot Java, and everything. And but it was like a totally internal site. And I took a little peek and it said, cool. That's it sounds so interesting. And then a week later, John Gage made the announcement, like the official, not the official, like the first demonstration of Java. And then a couple of months after that, there are some reporters asking about Java in Brazil. And so my boss comes in the room and says, there's some reporters asking something about this Java stuff. Does anyone know what it is? And I'm like, I know.
Cool.
And so that's how I started this whole JavaMan thing.
Okay, what you did at Sun then? So what was your job, and were you a Java programmer? So what you did actually in 1995?
So Sun, as I said, Sun Brazil at that time was an advanced sales group, right? Mm-hmm. There's no development. There's nothing. Nothing was being created, right? And so my official job at Sun, I was a pre-sales engineer, mm-hmm. right? Actually, I was a trainee, right? I was a trainee for a pre-sales engineer position, right? And since I was a trainee, I could not talk with the press, right? So at that time, there's a lot of interviews with Sun about Java that came out, and all of those interviews are coming. It's my boss that's right. But really, it's like me and him in the room, and everyone's asking questions. I was answering, and he was just kind of answering the business questions, right? But it was, it always came out as his name because I was not allowed to talk with the press. But so I was an intern. I was a pre-sales engineer intern. So our job was much more like official job was kind of analyze the needs for the customers, and then come up with hardware configurations that would support that load, right? But my boss was very, very nice, because from the very beginning, because Java's there's lots of people talking about Java. From the very beginning, it's like, Bruno, you can just keep studying the thing, just keep doing things. And then so what I was doing all the time was I was actually going to customers and either demoing Java things or discussing with them how they could use Java. And so I was working with customers that were adopting Java, right? So that's how I think somewhere in 1996, Banco Brazil is like the biggest bank in Brazil, the biggest bank in Latin America. They actually, through IBM convincing them that they should use Java as the language of choice, right? Because it was multi-platform, it could run on Windows, could run on OS2 at that time, it could run on Unix, and so Banco Brazil took that corporate decision of doing Java, and then but of course at that time IBM had no one in Brazil that could actually teach Java, right? So IBM contacted Sun, and I was the one that went and give the first trainings for Banco Brazil on Java, right? So basically the thing I was doing all the time was this, getting those customers that were like very early adopters, and they were doing whatever they were doing, right? So I worked in lots of different banks. I looked at a lot of different large companies, small projects, healthcare projects. Everyone that's doing some early adoption of Java. I would get involved, and Sun would just let me go, and I would work on the project for a while, for as long as people would take me, and Sun was not charging anything. So it would work for those cool projects. One of the project that I worked on, I actually remember the day that Pablo Madril and Fabiani Nardon walking into Sun office to see the new the Sun machines where you can run Java and anything like this, and they were doing this very, very large healthcare projects, right? They're adopting Java in the heart hospital in Brazil, and so I got involved with this. The follow up of this project actually won a Duke's Choice Award, one of the very first Duke's Choice Award. So I got involved in all those very, very cool large scale projects, a lot of experimentation, and several of the projects that I working on. So for example, this healthcare project got a Duke's Choice Award. Another project was the taxes, right? You pay your income taxes every year, right? Project in Brazil that's in the first year they had like 7 million people using a desktop Java application, right? So I was involved in that one too. So I got involved in all kinds of this very, very cool early adopter projects, because of all these things.
So your involvement doesn't mean programming or the hardware side?
Oh no! It's always programming, right? I never did anything the hardware side at Sun.
Okay.
So the things that I would do is that because I would be the most skilled Java programmer, right? So I'll be doing like the core part of the system, and also helping other people to get up to speed and learn Java, right? So that's actually how I built my own company around 2000. That's I left Sun and kind of helped bring to Brazil a consulting company called Suma Technologies, and later on we became the owners of the company. But doing exactly this, right? So we would get into projects, and we would mentor people, and we would develop the most sensitive parts, and help the rest of the team to develop their parts. So yeah, I kind of specialize in this kind of crazy projects.
Very cool. So you did a server-side programming or more client-side back then with applets and Swing and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, most of my work was more server-side programming, but for a long time I did a lot of I did a few projects that were very client-side. The income tax application, for example, was a completely desktop side application. It was not applets. It was like an installed desktop application that people would download, or actually at that time they would get on a CD and install it. And I also did many years later on. I participated on the border control application. That was also a desktop application. I helped them out with the security part of it. So I had some desktop application. I did some on mobile. I did some experimentation with some customers doing like the very early Java ME mobile applications. I did a little bit of Java cards. Some applications we had. Some customers experiment with Java card. But most of the things that I did was mostly server side.
So you also know the Java Ring? You have it?
Yes, I do have the Java Ring. Actually, I have a few of them actually, and so I do know the Java Ring, and I played a lot with it.
Yeah, it looks really nice, right? This is like a solid piece of hardware.
Yeah, it looks very, very nice. I wonder if its battery was supposed to last for 10 years, so it's probably dead by now. But yes, it was a nice. It was the cool thing about the Java Ring was that it had the same API as the Java card. So, but it was much more interesting because you didn't need to, at that time. The cards you couldn't really install, it was hard to install an application, the cards and things like this. So the Java Ring allowed you to install the application. The Java Ring, the Java card had almost no memory, right? But the Java Ring had actually a pretty good amount of memory that you could use. So it was like a Java card on steroids. Like, it was a lot easier to work with, a lot easier to experiment with.
Do you remember which IDEs you used back then?
So I've been a NetBeans user for a very, very long time. I remember using NetBeans before Sun acquired it, when it was still a paid product. And so I know I used it a little bit of everything, especially on the very beginning. There's one fun IDE that I used it for a while was Sun's. How was that called?
Sun Java Workshop.
Yeah, Sun Java Workshop. Yes, exactly, that one. It's like a browser-based interface, right? So I remember, demoing it and saying, you have the back button.
Yeah, and there was also Sun Java Studio. So the Java Studio was listed Java Beans, and Java Studio Workshop was the hardcore IDE.
Right. Yeah. I know. I demo all those IDs. I remember also for a while I used Borland's.
Yes. JBuilder.
When they launched JBuilder, but mostly I've been a NetBeans user, right? Since once NetBeans came out, because NetBeans came out after all that, right? So once NetBeans came out, and especially after Sun acquired NetBeans, that's mostly the idea I've used it since then.
When was your first Java 1?
So I did participate in a way, right, of the very, very first Java one, because I read all the transcripts. I was a trainee at that time. There's no way Sun is going to send me to an international event. But so I read all the transcript of the keynote. So by that time, Sun had the intranet, right? And so all the transcripts of the first Java one were available. And so I read, John Gage and all those guys kind of talking about Java at that time. But the very first Java one that I did was the second one. It was 1996 or 97. I think 1996 was the first one. 1997. So the second Java one is the one that I participated.
How big was it?
So I don't, I think the first one was 6,000 people. I would say the second one was about 10,000 people. And for me, I remember that when I first came in, and I was first time coming here to San Francisco, I didn't know if I would know anyone, right? And I was part of the mailing list, right? So there's a lot of people that I knew I was exchanging information with, but I couldn't have no idea if I would actually see anyone here. And so Sun had this pre-event party, right? The welcome party on the day before, the night before the event officially started, and it was in the MoMA Museum, right? This great place, amazing place near Moscone Center. So I vividly remember walking in and seeing all those people, and actually that's when. I had met John Gage because John Gage was in Brazil a few months back before I traveled to JavaOne. So I saw John Gage at the MoMA and I started talking with him. So this is a very very vivid memory for me. The very very first time I walked into the JavaOne crowd.
Actually, John Gage is an interesting personality. What I really enjoyed, he always attended the keynotes. So he had some keynotes speeches, and they were always not that tech focus on tech, more like social and business, and I really enjoyed that. So I really missed John later at JavaOne.
Yeah, John was an amazing person because he was very very smart, amazingly smart, or he is, right?
Yeah.
I haven't for a long time, but so John, I remember that John had this program. I don't remember the name of it, but John has this program that he would run every 3 months or something like this. That he would interview these very very smart people, and I remember one that he did. It was all about security, and you had those two hackers talking about some security issues, and one of the hackers was the guy was the guy that arrested Kevin Mitnick, and I'm not sure you remember that.
Yeah.
And they were talking about all this security stuff, like very very hard. And I was looking at the customers watching that. It's like, man, no one's gonna understand any of this. So those guys were, because they were talking about cryptography keys and everything. So once they finished speaking, John would say, "Oh, so you were saying that," and he would re-explain the whole thing in such an easy way for everyone to understand that you would see on the eyes of people watching to see that, oh, now I understand it. So John had this, right? So he would always get these very complicated matters and very complicated discussions and turn into something that was like that you could actually use for on your business and things like that. So yeah, I love it. One of the best memories that I have at JavaOne is that after every single keynote, and John was very nice, right? Because he would in every keynote he would say, "Oh, for this week of JavaOne, we are all Brazilians, right?" He was the one that started with this tradition of, hey, yeah, I know. And now that's the guys from the Netherlands kind of doing like very very strong, right? So, but so John would say that, and so after every keynote, I would just wait there until everyone leave, and it was just kind of John there talking with some people, and when it was all finished, he would say, "Bruno, let's go." And so we would walk around and we'd talk about all kinds of things Java, and he would bring me to the backstage of JavaOne and introduce me to people. And so we had like a 1 hour conversation after every single keynote. So that was like one of the best moments of JavaOne for me.
Yeah, and but you are. So we didn't talk about open source right now, but it seems like the open source stuff, you are really into open source. So when it started, were you from the beginning for open source, or how you got the open source bug or idea?
So for me, open source. So first of all, I started with Java in 1995, right? So one of the cool things that I had with Java was that you had the source code available, right? And for me, that was very cool because that time, the documentation would answer everything, right? And I was working with this crazy project inside customers trying to use Java for this new things that no one was using for anything, right? And so I was relying a lot on taking a look at the source code and see how things worked to actually answer those questions, right? I was the only person in Brazil that actually answered questions for all the Brazilian people that are using Java. inside Sun, right? So, when people came with this crazy questions, I would rely a lot on the source code of Java to take a look. And so I did mention this everywhere, right? Every time we talk about Java to any customers, I would say, you have the source code available, so you can take a look. There's a license that allows you to modify the source code. There's all this community around Java and the source code and everything. So remember that open source, of course. In my time in university, actually, I when I was in university a few years before, I did watch my first the first presentation that I saw from Stallman, right? From Richard Stallman, and so I already had this idea that you had the source code. I mean, that's how I started.
Was Richard in Brazil?
Yes, he was in Brazil many years ago, right? So when I first started university in 1992 or 3 or something like this. He was in Brazil, and I watched his a presentation from him at my university, and so I started my career by modifying the source code of video the games I was playing, right? So for me, having access to the source code was an amazing thing that Java had, right? So a few years later, when open source came out in 1998, right, I was already promoting the idea that Java had the source code available and you could modify the source code for 3 years, right? So for me, it was an obvious step, right, in promoting the whole notion that you have to have access to the source code. And one of the interesting things that people rarely think about in terms of Java, we had the struggle for many years with Java. Is Java open source? Java not open source, thing like that. But actually, the licensing of Java was before the open source definition, right? So Sun had a lot of its source code available in different licenses. Sun was a strong promoter of having the source code access and everything, and all kinds of things that they're doing. And so Java is one of those. It was like an experiment with this new license, and so when in 1998. In 1998, Netscape kind of open sourced its browser, right? And that's what launched the open source revolution. And the cool thing is that one of the inspirations that Netscape had to open source their source code is because Sun was had been the only company that had open sourced a new stuff. It was not open source; they had put available the source code of one of their new things a few years before there was Java, right? So IBM jumping in the Java bandwagon, Netscape jumping in the Java bandwagon, all because the source code was available, so they could modify it. And so it took many years for us to actually get to show Sun that we should change the license of Java to become a real open source license, right? But but both movements had the same philosophy behind, right? The idea that you could get the source code, you could modify it, you could send back to the community, and you could work with it, right? So for me, it was more like an extension of what I was doing. And what really got me into open source was that around 2000, when the Brazilian government was using heavily Java. And Java. So I actually wrote a chapter in the book Open Sources 2.0 talking about this exactly this story. But Java was the thing that helped the Brazilian government reach out for freedom, right? Before Java, everything the Brazilian government was doing was Windows based, right? There's very, very little of anything else. So the Brazilian government start using Java heavily to become independent of Microsoft and of IBM, right? So there's a lot of efforts to use.
Did it make a difference? I'm just now because now the Brazilian government can use Java and open source. Before they use Windows and IBM. So now,
they couldn't use it before, right? Because they were already using Windows and IBM, since the 80s, right? So Java is actually a way to get a little bit free from that.
Yeah, but right? Was it a big thing? I mean, did it make a difference for the Brazilian government? Did they save
Yeah,
money or whatever? What was the positive effect of going Java and open source?
It allowed it allowed you to actually choose, and so vendor, then there's a lot of things that you can do. You can get better deals, you can negotiate things, you can, there's all kinds of real effects of that, right? And so basically, instead of just having to rely on one single vendor for everything, the Brazilian government, so there's a lot of JBoss usage at that time. There's a lot of discussion around, so basically Java allowed the Brazilian government to start using everything, right? So there's so there was a proliferation of different platform, different vendors. What I think is a good thing, and then what happened was around 2000 there was the open source. Open source was getting stronger and stronger, and there was a big push in Brazil for the usage of open source, or free software and open source. We call here software livre, right? So there's a big push to that the government should adopt and use software livre for whatever they're doing. And there was a big thing because most of the, if you see the Brazilian government start using Linux because they could run JBoss on top of it, and they could run their Java application on top of it, right? So every single in the first couple of years of this movement of Linux adoption in Brazil, every single application was a Java application, right? You're all migrating existing Java applications running on Windows to Linux because you could just kind of reinstall everything and run, right? And so at the same time, there's this big movement that, well, if we're now pushing for software livre, Java is not livre, right? So and so that's when I got that's so around 2000. That's when I got heavily involved in the discussion, because so for me, Java was not the Sun's version of Java. The Sun implementation of Java was not livre, but I didn't see any reason why we could not have a real a real open source implementation of Java, right? There's some initiatives like Cafe VM and some others that they were doing. So I got involved in that discussion, and that's when I got really heavily involved in open source, because I got involved in that discussion by showing that Java was a standard, and being a standard could be implemented in different specifications. For me, for the government, it was more important that the government was using a standard that could be implemented in open source than if the government was just using open source, right? So that was the discussion I got involved in, and that's how I got heavily involved in open source. So I went to to discuss all the licensing, and I went to understand how the Java license worked, and I went to understand how the JCP worked, right? And by that time, I was the first person. Actually, the guys from the JCP tell me that I was the only individual that ever paid to join the JCP, right? So I was very into this discussion of how we can actually make sure that the JCP have the right provisions so we could implement an open source version of Java at some point, right? So that's how I got heavily involved.
That's interesting, because I think around 2000 I opened my own JSR, and this was, I think, 193. It was like I'm just searching for it, and I was also an individual, and I was short. As I was short before paying, I remember it was $5,000 or something. Client-side container, it was 2002. And I'm the specification lead and expert group lead, but it was then withdrawn because IBM was not that. They had already Eclipse started, and they didn't wanted to have client-side container. But I didn't have to pay that because they told me I'm individual, so I'm like a freelancer, and then I was able to participate without paying.
Right. So basically, what I've learned after that, right? So because I didn't have any contacts in the JCP at that time, right? So I just kind of joined in and registered and paid for it, right? And I think it was $5,000 for a company, and if you were an individual, it was a lot cheaper. I think like $200 or $100, something like this. And so, but what I learned later on is that for most individuals that wanted to participate, they would just waive the fee. That's why that's why Patrick Curran always tells me that I was the only person that ever paid
Okay.
individual.
Exactly. It was Patrick Curran. I was in touch with him, and then one day he said, "I have to withdraw the JSR because of some issues and whatever." But it was interesting experience. So
Yeah. Yes.
so so you worked
right.
on open source, and I think you worked with Simon Phipps together to open source Java, or you were the only initiator, or what was the story?
Oh, so the story of open source Java is a long one, right? But there's lots and lots of people that participated. But and I had a small participation by discussing the topic, right? So I left Sun in 1995. I mean, I left Sun in 2000, and that's when I built my own company. So and then I came back to Sun in 2006, right? So I actually came back to Sun one day after they announced the open source of Java.
And so why you did it?
So basically, during this 6 years, I fought for I discussed with Sun. I fought for the open sourcing of Java. We actually had the whole thing started when we had a meeting at the FISLI, the International Free Software Forum that happens in Brazil, in Porto Alegre, in the south of Brazil. And so at that meeting, I've met a guy called Ian Schessler. Ian is a Debian developer, and also he participated in lots of open source free Java versions. And one of the things that Ian is recognized for is to suggest to the Debian community to create the open source definition, right? And so Ian was in Brazil at that time, so he came to talk with me. And we both discussing how what we could do in terms of the open source Java. And so we actually organized a meeting with the guys from IBM that were in the event, with Simon Phipps from Sun that was at the event. And so we had So Java, there's the user group. We had IBM, we had Sun, and we had Debian through Ian. There's four people. This four groups kind of have this discussion. I think it was somewhere around 2000 or 2001, I think. And then and we had all the discussion about the Brazilian government wanting to use open source, and Java was not officially free. How we could actually get the license of Java or at least having the JCP in a way that we could actually have an open source license of Java. That's when the discussion started. And so I got involved specifically because for me, Java was the main technology for us to have freedom, right? For me, freedom is actually the freedom that of course, there's an important freedom of changing the code and things like that. But for me, freedom is it's a lot to be okay. I put all this effort in developing my application, right? So how can I actually run my application in different places? That's a very important freedom that Java provides. So for me, Java was always providing an extra freedom that open source by itself doesn't provide. The whole standards and the multi-platform things. That was extremely important. So I got involved because I wanted that Java to succeed, not only in the Brazilian government but everywhere. And I saw that only the freedom of choosing different vendors, but not having the freedom of you implementing, you changing the VM, or you implement the VM to different systems. You actually porting the VM into all places. I had some insights on how hard it was to port the VM to other places, and for me, that was a problem for Java, right? Not being able to port Java everywhere, and having to rely on Sun to do those kind of things. It was not good, right? So that's how I got. That's why I got involved, because I think for me, for Java to succeed, I had the idea, and I had the firm impression that for Java to succeed, we had to have the best portability ever, and that was open source was the way.
So, but what was the problem? Was it one person at Sun who had to say yes to open source Java? So what was the challenge? Or was it just a legal issue, or, how you did it?
There's a lot of discussion. I mean, there's a very good blog post, if you can put on the notes after. There's a very good blog post from Denise Cooper where she lists everyone that participated on that effort. And I think that the problem was I think there's a lot of problems. There's the legal discussions. Java was Sun's main thing, right? So open sourcing that was like, everyone's kind of say, oh, Sun is never going to open source Solaris. But I think Solaris was a small part. Java was the big thing that Sun had at that time, right? And so open source, there's a lot of people thought that if you open source in Java, Sun would lose control. Sun had the idea of being like the benevolent dictator of Java. Even James Gosling, right? I remember we organized a meeting between James Gosling and Dalibor Topic. And Dalibor, at that time, he was the maintainer of Cafe VM. And we organized that meeting in Brasilia when James visited Brazil for the first time. And James told Dalibor that time, he said, look, you want to do a Java VM, right? That's not something I'm interested, because I already did mine, right? Mm-hmm. So I think even for James, the whole idea of kind of someone wanting to do another VM was not obvious, right? There was interest, right? Mm-hmm. And so today, if you think back, like today, Dalibor Topic is the OpenJDK community manager, right? So how things changed from that meeting. So and so I think there was a lot of I wouldn't say a lot of resistance in C. I think there's a lot of doubts if that would be useful for anything, right? It was a lot of effort. It would be a huge money effort, a huge effort to build the community. There's a lot of things that had to be done for this to happen, and I don't think people were actually convinced that things should be done, right? I think a lot of people at Sun thought that, well, we have a license that's open source enough, right? Why do we need to do all of that? So I think there's some of that. And Sun was an interesting company because, you could have everyone agreeing to it. But if you had one person saying, I'm not sure, then Sun would not do it, right?
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of convincing from a lot of different people. So I think Denise Cooper, Simon Phipps, and a lot of other people had to kind of go and one by one and talk with with a lot of those people. And I was outside of the Sun at the time, right? So my main work was, to mobilize the user groups and to mobilize the government and have the discussions and bring people together and talk a lot about it. And I remember I was actually with Geir Magnussen. Geir Magnussen, at that time, he was a vice president of Apache, and he came to a conference, the same event that James Gosling came. Geir came down to Brazil, in Brasilia, and we had a bunch of Java hackers, right? Geir, Simon was there, Dalibor Topic was there. I had all those people. There's the JCP guys were there. Ono Klutz from the JCP was there. We had lots of JavaScript group leaders. So we had all those people from all over the world. We had people from IBM, had people from Sun. We had all of them there, and we spent a lot of times talking. And then we took those guys to a city called Pirenópolis. It's a beautiful place with lots of waterfalls. And so we spent one day walking, right, on these waterfalls and swimming and all these kind of things. And this whole day, right, it was all discussing the open sourcing of Java, right? Just everything, all the opinions, and everyone, discussing the legal things, and like that's like a full day of walking and discussing the open sourcing of Java. So when Geir Magnussen came out of that day, and he just, I met him at JavaMan, Code One last week, and he remembered. That's actually, he said, "Oh, that's when we launched in Harmony, right? Because that day is when Geir came out of the discussion with the certainty that Apache should do an open source Java VM. It wasn't called Harmony at the time. There was another name that they were discussing, that Geir was discussing, but it became Harmony later after that. But from that discussion, that's when Geir got the assurance from the JCP, the assurance from Simon, and the assurance from other people that yes, it was indeed possible to to create a clean room open source implementation of Java, and that's when we launched Harmony, the Harmony project. A couple of weeks after that. So so a lot of this was getting people together to discuss things. And one thing that you said is it was about convincing Sun, and for me, it was never about convincing Sun. I was one of the guys that I never asked Sun to open source Sun's implementation of Java. The only thing that I wanted for all that time was to have a free, open source, compatible, right, certified implementation of Java based on the JCP standards done by someone else, right? I always thought that Sun could do whatever they wanted with their implementation, as long as we had the possibility of doing something that we wanted with whatever implementation we wanted, right? And I think that what happened was that when Harmony took off and there was interest in the market and everyone was talking about it, that's when Sun realized that either they open source their own implementation or they're just going to be left behind. That's my impression. Right?
Yeah.
I wasn't at the time, but that's I think a lot of people from Sun use it Harmony as the last straw, kind of like the last push, and once they did that, that's then Sun finally announced the open sourcing of Java, and I start working for Sun again on the NetBeans group. The day after that.
I remember exactly. You were a community manager at NetBeans or something like this, right?
Exactly. So I became the NetBeans worldwide community manager, and my first official day was right after Sun announced the open sourcing of Java. Yes.
Yeah, and this is how I met you via emails the first time. So okay, now I remember, because I knew we had something to do with each other, but I couldn't remember where.
Right. Yes. Exactly. So then I worked for NetBeans for quite some time, and actually for a couple of years I worked for NetBeans as a community manager, and that's when Oracle acquired Sun, mm-hmm. and then and then I was laid off right before the acquisition was completed.
Oh, really? But this is actually unusual. So, did they close the team, or they somehow suspected your open source background?
Well, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't want to be more critical than I should with some people, but I know it had everything to do with Sun Brazil.
Okay.
There was I think people at Sun Brazil are trying to protect whoever's position was, I don't know, something like this, mm-hmm. because there's a lot of people laid off in Brazil. We had about 30 people laid off at the same time. They're all related to the open source efforts.
Okay.
And I don't think there was a similar laid off with open source team from around the world. So and my boss, he was really upset because he did not want to lay me off, but it was a decision from Sun Brazil, and I was a Sun Brazil employee, right? So, but for me it was good, right? I got I got laid off by Sun and not by Oracle, right? So for me, I came back to my own company as a consultant, and there's a lot of good things that happened because of that. So I have no grudges whatsoever for what happened.
It was 2009, right?
That was 2009, yes, exactly.
And then, so you were just consultant in your own company?
Yeah, so then I came back. So for me, one of the last things I did at Sun, I was working a little bit of the cloud efforts from Sun. So when I was laid off from Sun, one of the things that I called I told my partners because we had a consulting company that I stepped out to go work back at Sun, right? So so when I was laid off, I called my friend and said, look, I want you, I'm coming back, but first of all I have to think a little bit of what I'm going to do in my life, And I think there's a huge opportunity around the clouds right now, and I want to take a look at this. So so because I was dealing with the SunCloud initiative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I went out and I called a good friend, Fabiani Nardon, and me and her, we built a cloud company called Tools Cloud, and where we start doing Jenkins and continuous integration, continuous deployment in the cloud. And so there was a very we still we still run this company. It still exists. We have lots of cool customers, and but that was my initiative, my first try, I guess, of actually creating a product, right? So we went out and we got some. It was a startup, so we got some funding. I spent some time in the U.S. to launch the company and things like that. And then it's in a lot of ways, all of our initiatives that we're trying with it. I mean, the company still exists and it still works, and the customers are happy and everything. But all of our marketing initiatives that we try to do here in the U.S. fail miserably, right? And that was the moment that I realized that you can't just be if you really want to do something, if you really want to build your own stuff, you can't just be a technical guy, right? Me and Fabiani were very technical. We just wanted to do the technical things. We're not interested in doing the for us, all this marketing and sales was something that someone else had to deal with. And that when we completely failed, it was clear for me that we failed because we were unable to tell our marketing team and our sales team what our vision was, right? They never understood what we wanted to do. And that's when I realized, well, if you really want to be independent, if you really want to be the best developer you can be, you have to have some of this other knowledge, right? So I went on a search on actually what else do we need to be great developers, what else we need to be to actually take control of our careers, right? That was my next step, I guess.
Yeah. So and now you are running Tools Cloud and Suma, or what are you doing now?
So basically, so Tools Cloud still exists, and the guy that runs it's a friend of mine called Rodrigo Moutinho. He mostly runs it, and he's reshaping it in lots of cool ways. But what I'm doing now is I actually kind of went back to my roots, right? I kind of remember that story I told you about my dad and when I first started Sun, and I saw how important it was for my dad to help me and help me do what I wanted instead of kind of trying to convince me to do what he wanted to do. And then I realized that for everything that I've done in my career since that day, I always just put my own goals to the side so I could help other people improve their careers, right? So I look at all the effort that I did with the Java user groups, even the open sourcing of Java. It had very little to do with my own stuff, right? A lot to do with other people actually being able to step up in their careers. And so a lot of things that I was doing had everything to do. Even my discussion around continuous integration, continuous deployment is in DevOps, right? I did a big push of DevOps a few years ago, and even that, the whole objective was how we can get developers to take control of their careers, how we can get developers to actually use the newest technology and don't work on crazy projects that's like you never go back home. So all of these had to do with career discussion, right? So that's why the last couple of years I kind of switched gears a little bit, and I launched the Code for Life initiative. And Code for Life is all about helping developers to grow their careers, helping developers to take control and design their own careers, right? And so we have a series of initiatives we just did for Oracle Code One, for example. We just did an initiative to help developers. We call it the Speaker Secrets, where we had an initiative to help developers become better speakers. So I've been in the last couple of years, especially the last year, I've been kind of switch it to full-time helping developers to improve their careers.
Was it a commercial initiative or how you earn your money?
Well, there's a it's the cool thing about the way we can do business today is that almost 100% of everything I do is completely free for everyone, right? But there are a few people that want more, right? They want to really help, because the whole thing is uh, content is easy and it's free, right? Everything's available. But the thing that's not free is my time,
Exactly.
right? And the cool thing that I've learned is that by helping a few people that want to have the support and want to have the mentorship and want to help and want to have someone helping them along the way, right? By helping a few people like this, I can actually get 100% of my time to help everyone. So today, instead of doing consulting and kind of have to do lots of other things to pay my day job, and so I could do nights and weekends helping people that are doing their careers, I can do 100% of my time helping people do their careers, right? So this is this has been so yes, it is a commercial initiative. It has that's how I earn my money today, right? But of course, I still have the consulting company, Suma. That's we have about 40 consultants, so that's a very very good revenue stream. We do have Tools Cloud, that's also a good, we have lots of customers. There are also a good revenue stream. Today 100% of my work is on Code for Life.
Oh, cool. So you are thinking now it's time to give back, right?
Yes. So I've been I think it's has always been time to give back, right? I've been giving back everything that I've done. I've been giving back to the community since many years ago. But there's a difference, right? There is, a lot of times you're giving back, but what you're giving to the community is your personal time, right? You're actually taking time out of your family, taking time, even take some of your health, right? And there is a limit on how much you can do about that. So what I kind of learned in the last couple of years, that there are ways for you to do this in a way that actually brings you real results. So you can actually do more, right? It's funny that how much more you can do, how much more you can give back when actually what you're doing brings you real results for your business. I think that's something that I took many years to learn, and even at Sun, right? Sun was giving a lot of things to a lot of people. They're giving a lot of code and everything, and a lot of things for free, but without thinking about the business. That's why Sun went bankrupt, right?
Yeah.
And so instead of, I think it's possible for you to create something that it really allows you to get real results for you, and the more results you have for you, what happens then more results you bring for everyone else.
Yeah, this is called synergy, right?
Yeah. Great word. Yes.
You attended the JavaMan or Code One. I also attended. I spent 2 days in San Francisco, and I briefly saw you on the hall, but I went to my talk and then I flew back to Germany. What's your thoughts renaming JavaMan to Code One?
Oh, well. There's two things, right? First of all, I think that every event that kind of become a little bit broader event and attracted more developers from other areas became a better event, right? So TDC, the Developers Conference in Brazil, did this many years ago and was very successful. DevVox in Belgium did this, was very successful. So I don't think that the expansion of JavaMan into more codes related things and Java VM related languages and other things like this, I don't think that's a bad idea. I like it, this, right? The thing that bothered me a little bit was it could have been called Code One, right? But it was actually called Oracle Code One, and I think that it kind of upsets some companies, and so I think that at least in this first year, I know some companies were not interested in coming, or some people didn't get approval from their managers to come because it was now an Oracle event, and I think this is bad. I think this is bad for the community. Java is a multi-vendor, multi-community effort. So I think the Java brand represented that more than the Oracle brand does. So
Exactly.
I didn't like that part. But Code One, it's not. I don't think it's not bad. And the truth is, I was surprised that we did see a lot of companies at the event. So maybe it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. But that was the part I didn't like.
We will see next year. This is what interests me, because I think many people were curious how it looks like and what happens, and I'm really curious how many
Right.
attendees we will have next year. So my thoughts on that was JavaMan. It was a very strong brand. So I saw enterprise developers from USA, and only saw them at JavaOne, never else. So we met once a year and then chat a little bit, and then the next year, and then didn't saw them this year. And I'm really curious whether they will come back next year. And I think from Oracle perspective and marketing perspective, it was not that smart move to rename JavaOne to Code One. What I would do, I would probably Code One is. By the way, Code One is a great name. I like the name. Code One sounds great, but they could have Code One, and then and they like a brand, or let's say like an umbrella name, and then introduce Java One, Rust One, and whatever one, and they have little ones behind the scenes, because right now is a little bit what I don't think what will happen is that we'll have Moscone West and a Rust developer will walk in and try to find a Rust talks, or Go developer will try to find Go talks, or JavaScript developer JavaScript talks, because it is really hard to find them, right? This is we cannot. This is what I'm curious how it will work out, and also I think young developers, how likely it is that a young Go, Rust, or JavaScript developer will join, Oracle Code One, which happens to be at exactly the same time as Oracle Open World. So this is also what interests me, how it will, play out.
Right. Yeah, I also don't know. I think that this year was kind of an experiment, and now I like you. I'm curious to see what people think. Right. I think that's in general we got some good feedback. I haven't seen people complaining about the event. I haven't seen people not liking the event in general. So I think that general feedback was good.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot of it's going to depend on how the companies see it, right?
Yeah.
On how the company will have results or not results from the event, right? So let's see how that's going to be next year. I know that some people are complaining about the size of the rooms, and maybe the rooms are too big, and not enough attendees or things like this. So let's see how that's going to be. And I'm with you, right? Like I want to see how next year is gonna pan out.
Exactly. By the way, I was really satisfied with Code One from the talk perspectives. I attended several talks and listened to them, and they were great as always. So I'm just curious how it plays out next year. So
right. I have to say that I there's a lot of great things for me. Code One was amazing. Really, I've got a lot of great conversations. I thought that the Java Champions briefing was excellent this year. I thought that the presentation that I watched was very, very good. I have lots of everyone that I expected to see there, or actually almost everyone I expect to see there was there. So I think that the hub was great. There's so many cool things going on in the hub. So I really enjoyed Oracle One. But for me in particular, it was very special because this year we got some support from Oracle, and we did the Speaker Secrets effort where we actually helped speakers to be better presenters at Code One. So we did this for 3 weeks before the event. We had a speakers meeting during the event, on the Sunday right before the event started, and so for me,
was really, really special because I had this year I had a different relationship with the speakers that I thought it was a lot deeper than previous years. So for me, Code One actually was very, very special.
Hey, cool. So now, how the people, the listeners of the show, can find you on the internet? So what's your links? What's your what's the URI of your companies and so forth?
Okay, so I think the best thing that you can do is go for code4.life, code the number 4 dot life, and that is the career initiative. So if you're listening to this and you want to improve your career and you want to be a better developer, you go there. If you put your name in email, you got an email from me. So you can ask me any questions. I'm kind of totally available to help you out in your career. If you prefer, you can also follow me on JavaMan on Twitter. I'm also very available there, and I think those are the two best ways.
So okay, great. So I wish you lots of luck with Code for Life, right? This is the really Code for Life, yeah.
Yeah,
and with your other companies as well. So it was, now I know who you are. Actually, we met for 10 years and I never had the chance, to ask you these questions. So I think podcasts are a great venue for this.
Yes, podcasts, it's great for this. So thanks a lot, Adam. It's amazing. I'm a fan of your podcasts. Thanks a lot for inviting me. For me, it's a very, very big honor to be part of this. You are a top leader in this industry, and it's a big, big honor to be here with you. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.